St. Louis, the gateway to the West, is now the gateway to the best.
Swing and get up, baby! Get up! Get up! Get up! Get up! Home
The game is over. The series is over. The wait is over.
What's happening, nerds? This is John Nerding Out with Cards, and I got to do something really awesome this past week on the 30th, and I got to go to the Chiefs training camp in St. Joseph, Missouri. Really awesome, really event, because it was one of those things where it's just like, after I retired from the Coast Guard, one of my bucket list items was going over to St. Joe and going to Chiefs training camp. And it just so happened that day was Military Appreciation Day. And based on the research I found on the internet, I got, conflicting information. It is what it is. So it wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be, but at the same time, it was awesome. And that event is actually going to tie into my VR for Brent Richards and baseball cards, because he is celebrating his 2-year anniversary here on the YouTube. Absolutely love his channel. Really awesome guy to talk to. And recently I got to be on a cardboard banter with him and Shane. And that's one of the reasons why, if you're wondering, John, what the hell are you wearing? And as you know, I was a St. Louis Rams fan. I am now a Chiefs fan. And so I got the Chiefs hat on from training camp, and I have my Isaac Bruce jersey on. And the stories, this kind of goes together with the stories, right? So anyway, I went to Chiefs training camp, and my card purchases here lately have subsided because I picked up a couple things that I thought would be handy for the training camp. And full disclosure, I did not get any autographs, though I was hoping to. But I got this Salute to Service mini helmet, because this is the Arctic, and I figured, I've been to Antarctica, the bottom of the world. But so I thought that'd be kind of cool. Maybe get Kelsey or Mahomes a sign. Didn't work out. Now, some players came by, but I'm not a big autograph collector, right? And so I was just like, there was a select few players that if they came over, I would get their autograph, but it didn't work out. And this is the 2023 Salute to Service helmet. So like I said, no autographs, but they'll go over pretty cool on the shelf there, and for decoration. But anyway, I got some pictures I'll show you. And so, here it is. Because it was Military Appreciation Day, I got my Salute to Service Travis Kelce jersey on. I got my Coast Guard retired hat on. And I thought it'd be kind of cool to get a picture there. Welcome to training camp. And that's one of the cool things, too. This is the first time I've gotten to see the Chiefs in person. Even though it's a training camp environment, not a game, but at the same time, really, really cool. And here was the entranceway. When you go to walk in, you can see how far back I was. And I got there over an hour early. But definitely a lot of Chiefs fans there. A lot of kids there. I thought school had started because, like, my kids, their school has started. And so, but nope, still a lot of kids. And that's just it. When you see that football field right there in your in the view of the picture, that's actually a field dedicated to kids, drills and setups and things like that for them to do. Really cool stuff. Got a picture with the mascot, KC Wolf. And honestly, this made the training camp for me. I like getting pictures of mascots and everything. I've done a video on that before. And, because I live in St. Louis and not the Kansas City area, this is really like the best way for me to meet the Chiefs mascot. And so I thought that was awesome. I was stoked to do that, and, what have you. So that was really cool. Here's just a picture of the field. All the players are doing their drills and everything, and that was just really cool to see. I got to see Mahomes, throwing a deep ball, or practicing this and practicing that. They were practicing, goal line scenarios, and punt returners were doing their thing, and the kickers were doing their thing. It was just really cool for me to see anyway. And then here I just put a couple pictures up, when Kelsey was walking onto the field, when Mahomes was walking onto the field. And, they had some other cool stuff set up. They had like these gigantic replica Super Bowl championship rings, from the Dynasty, and then, from Super Bowl II. And so that was really cool stuff to see. They had cheerleaders there. They had a bunch of military themed stuff going on. There was a select few military personnel that got to go onto the field after the practice, to include the recruiting office for the Coast Guard that is there in Kansas City. Those guys. The Chiefs announcer was there. Just awesome stuff. And then I got, this training camp guide. And then I got myself pin because I collect pins, really cheap, easy souvenir for, events, places, and things like that I go to. But now, the VR for Brent, and so his VR was for the most influential person within the hobby for you. And so I've mentioned my grandma Sandy. She's my grandmother on my dad's side several times on my channel before when I've showed newspapers and things like that. I talked about how she's the one that got me my Albert Pujols rookie card, my first 1982 Ozzie Smith card. But I want to kind of focus this to football and training camps, right? So, my grandma Sandy, she was awesome. My dad was in the Navy, stationed in Virginia, South Carolina, and things like that, and she would save newspapers for me. She would VHS games, Blues, Rams, Cardinals, and all this cool stuff, and she would send them to me, and that was really the only way that I could be connected with my favorite teams. And that's just it. Like the things that she was doing allowed me to be connected with my favorite teams. And you see how it is like nowadays, like there's just, for me, that connection continues and continues on. And I think in large part because of her, and then, like I said, she, within the hobby, like I said, she was getting me cards and all this other stuff. But going back to the training camp portion of it, her and my great grandmother. So my great grandmother, she was in her early 80s at the time. This was 1995. We got to go back to St. Louis for the summer, and that's when the Rams moved to St. Louis, and that's why I'm wearing this Isaac Bruce jersey. And so what they did was they took me to the first Rams training camp in St. Louis, and it was in Macomb, Illinois, at a school there. So I've got some pictures. Like I got this photo album. These pictures have been in here since 1995. And you see all these pictures here. And I was 10 years old at the time. And these are pictures that my grandmother and my great grandmother were taking. Almost a 10-year-old little boy. I'm running around. My great grandmother was, like I said, in her 80s. My grandmother, she had suffered from a stroke in the 80s, and so she was she had limited use of one side of her body, and they were keeping up. So I pulled out a few pictures I thought would be really cool to show. But this is when I got to meet Jerome Bettis. I'm not in the picture. Like that kid is not me, but Jerome, he was he wouldn't stop for anything. He just kept trucking along. There was a ring of people around him. And luckily, I did get his autograph, and I'll show that here in a minute. But really cool stuff, right? He's a Pro Football Hall of Famer. Like I said, when the Rams moved to St. Louis, he was the man. He had just come off of 2 amazing seasons. This was actually he had held out of training camp, and this was the first day where he ended his holdout. And so that was really cool. This picture right here, now this is me, 10-year-old me. And that's with Todd Kinchin. And, he was a wide receiver, more known for like punt returns, kick returns, and everything, especially in that 95 season. And they were likening him to Crazy Legs Elroy Hirsch because of the crazy stuff he was doing on the field, especially there at the beginning of the 1995 season. But really cool. Sean Gilbert. Hitman might remember him because he went from the Rams to the Redskins, I believe. But he was a big-time defensive line player, tackle, I believe. And this one's pretty neat. And this is me meeting Mark Rypien, Super Bowl winning quarterback for the Redskins. Again, Hitman. I'm pretty sure he's a big fan of Mark Rypien. And he was a backup quarterback for the Rams that year. But he's his place in football history is forever cemented with that Super Bowl win. You know what I mean? So with that, so that's, if you don't see it up there, but that's where this pennant comes into play. And if you noticed it in, especially this picture, that's the pennant I was carrying around and having players autograph. So I know one y'all would be very interested in, but that's Jerome Bettis. You got Kevin Carter there, first ever St. Louis Rams draft pick. And then, Todd Kinchin, he's right there. Rich Brooks, the first coach of the St. Louis Rams. And then, there you go, Mark Rypien. But really cool stuff. You got Todd Light, Tommy Maddox for the Steelers fans, along with Jerome Bettis. But awesome stuff. This is when the Rams bolted out of town. This is one of the few things that I have kept because of these memories that I have with my grandmother and my great grandmother, but specifically my grandma Sandy. which is the scope of this video. But yeah, there was that one moment, right? And one of the things that was really cool when the Rams moved to town, I said she would send me newspapers and everything, but she had made this scrapbook for me. You see, I wrote on there back at that time, 1995 St. Louis Rams. But what she did was she made this scrapbook for the first season of the St. Louis Rams. And so, this is kind of getting to know the Rams right here. They're on the front page, and I'll show a little bit, but first week of the season, we were kind of shocked. They go into Lambeau and beat the Green Bay Packers with Brett Favre. And Isaac, that's when his coming out party came into play, because he was a special teams player at the time, and he blocked a punt, real pivotal play in the game. But I'll show some other stuff that I think is just really, really cool, because after that was their first home game in St. Louis at Busch Stadium, because the dome was not completed yet. And it's really cool because there was that connection there, because the St. Louis Rams football team played in Busch Stadium. So it's kind of neat that the Rams had started there at Busch. But really, really cool stuff. Record crowd at Busch, 58,000. But St. Louis, we can't support the Rams. But yeah, just awesome stuff. I think oh shoot, where is it here? This, they ended up getting that season. They started off 4-0 and then ended up missing the playoffs. But here's really cool. First touchdown in the dome. Jerome Bettis scored that. And, again, first game in the dome, over 65,000 people there for the first game against the Carolina Panthers. But just absolutely awesome stuff. It chronicles the just that phenomenal season where Isaac Bruce just bursted onto the scene with over 1,700 yards, even though he did not make the Pro Bowl. But, like I said, awesome stuff. Here you go, Hitman, if you're watching this. Where the Rams lost to them, that was kind of like the end of the season for them. But anyway, I've always kept this, and it was just really cool to me. And like I said, Isaac Bruce and sophomore season with 119 catches. Just awesome stuff. So anyway, she also got me this, and this will be kind of like my debut, of this Isaac Bruce autograph card, which I've showed this before, but now check out the flip here. So Jeff over to Fine Card Collector finally talked me into getting a channel flip for myself. Here it is. But the thing is, my grandmother got me this card, and I got it autographed by Isaac Bruce, and it was just a special commemorative set sold by McDonald's. They just put the McDonald's logo on the Collector's Choice cards of that year. But no, so again, congratulations to Brent. I hope this video does, that milestone of his justice. But it was really cool to talk about my grandma Sandy and just that time, which was really special. And one of the reasons why when the Rams moved, it hurt so much is because of those memories, and kind of tying that in with something that I've always wanted to do for the Chiefs training camp, and just the connection there. You know what I mean? So anyway, this is how I'm nerding out, and thanks for nerding out with me.